eyes gouged out mid-fight to 15 groin shots to an elbow banned. This is every move that got banned from the UFC forever. And some of those moves are so cruel, the UFC had to rewrite the rules right there in the emergency rooms. November 12th, 1993, Denver, Colorado. A man named Rorion Gracie had an idea that sounded insane. Take fighters from completely different martial arts, a boxer, a sumo wrestler, a karate master, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, lock them in an octagon, and let them fight with almost no rules. The question, which fighting style actually wins in a real fight? The rules? There were two. No biting, no eye gouging, that's it. And even those weren't enforced by disqualification. They were enforced by a $1,500 fine. So technically, you could bite someone and walk away with a fine. How many rules should we have? Two? That's it? No biting, no eye gouging, that's it. What about groin strikes? What about them? They're incredibly painful, then don't get hit there. No weight classes, no time limits, no gloves, no idea what was about to happen. The very first fight in UFC history was Gerard Gordeau, a 6'5" Dutch kickboxer, versus Taylor Tooley, a 400-pound sumo wrestler. It lasted 26 seconds. Gordeau kicked Tooley so hard in the face that 3 of his teeth flew out. 2 of them got stuck in Gordeau's foot. The third one reportedly landed under the announcer's table. Welcome to the UFC. And remember that name? Gerard Gordeau. He's not done. That same night, a boxer named Art Jimerson walked into the cage wearing one boxing glove, one, on his left hand, because apparently his right hand was too important to protect. Royce Gracie, 170 pounds of jiu-jitsu, took him down and made him tap in 2 minutes. The glove did not help, but here's the part nobody talks about from that first night. In the finals, Gordeau fought Royce Gracie. While trapped on the ground, Gordeau bit Gracie's ear, intentionally. In a sport that technically only banned 2 things, and biting was one of them. So we're one event deep and someone already broke 50% of the rules. Classic. The UFC didn't start with rules, it started with a philosophy. Figure it out in the cage. But the cage had other plans. UFC 4, December 16th, 1994, Tulsa, Oklahoma. A karate black belt named Keith Hackney fought a 250-pound man named Joe Sun. Sun got Hackney in a guillotine choke. That's when someone wraps their arm around your neck and squeezes until you can't breathe. Hackney couldn't get out. So he did the only logical thing. He punched Joe Sun in the groin. Repeatedly, full power. Over and over and over. Wait, that's legal? Completely. How many times did he? Somewhere. Between 10 and 15. And it was 100% legal. The crowd went quiet. Then someone started counting out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The arena didn't know whether to look away or keep watching. Sun held on. Eventually, Hackney got free and finished the fight. That didn't get groin strikes banned immediately, but it planted the seed. Because even by 1994 standards, a decade that gave us frosted tips and JNCO jeans, watching a man get punched in the groin 15 times on pay-per-view was a hard sell to advertisers. But groin strikes weren't even the biggest problem. Enter Mark Coleman. Coleman was a wrestler, Olympic level, massive, and he discovered something terrifyingly effective. If you take someone down and pin them to the mat, you can just headbutt them. No technique required, no setup, just skull meets face over and over like a human jackhammer with a grudge. At UFC 10, Coleman headbutted Don Fry so many times that Fry's face looked unrecognizable by the end. The audience was horrified. The commission was horrified. Coleman was thrilled. The UFC banned headbutts starting at UFC 15, October 1997. They literally called it the Coleman Rule. Coleman's reaction? He had to learn how to actually punch, which, for a man who'd been using his forehead as a weapon for 3 years, was like asking a carpenter to stop using his hammer and start using polite conversation. File that away. The idea that banning one weapon forces a fighter to evolve. It matters later. While the UFC was slowly building a rulebook in America, something very different was happening on the other side of the world. In Japan, a promotion called Pride Fighting Championships had a completely opposite philosophy, where the UFC said no soccer kicks, no stomps, no knees to a grounded opponent. Pride said absolutely yes to all of that, but no elbows, because apparently kicking a man in the skull while he's on the floor is fine, but elbowing him is crossing a line. Two organizations, same sport, completely different rules. It was like two restaurants serving the same dish, except one lets you eat with a chainsaw. And Pride's most terrifying weapon had a name, Wanderlei Silva. They called him the Axe Murderer. Not as marketing. As a description, Silva would knock opponents down and then sprint across the ring and soccer kick them in the head while they were lying on the canvas. Full speed, full force, like he was trying to score the winning penalty in the World Cup, except the ball was a human head. He held the Pride middleweight title for 6 years doing this. 6 years of stomps, soccer kicks, and knees to grounded opponents that would have gotten him arrested in most American states. Is that safe? Define safe. Then came Rampage Jackson. Pride Critical Countdown, 2004. Ricardo Arona caught Jackson in a triangle choke. That's when someone wraps their legs around your head and squeezes until the blood stops reaching your brain. Most fighters tap. Most fighters accept their fate. Rampage picked Arona up while being choked, lifted him into the air, and powerbombed him headfirst into the canvas like a WWE finishing move. Except this was real, and nobody was acting. Arona went unconscious on impact. The arena lost its mind. That slam was legal under Pride rules. Under today's UFC rules, a straight pile driver is banned. But a slam with an arc, still legal. The difference between legal and illegal sometimes comes down to the angle at which you drop a man on his skull. So now you had two versions of the same sport that couldn't agree on which moves were too dangerous. Two organizations, same cage, completely different answers to the same question. How much is too much? That gap between what Pride allowed and what the UFC was banning couldn't last. Someone had to draw a line, not because they wanted to, because without one, the sport was going to be shut down before anyone could answer the question. On April 3rd, 2001, somebody did, and the line they drew changed everything, including the career of a man who hadn't even turned pro yet. Conference room in New Jersey. Big John McCarthy, the most famous referee in MMA history. Jeff Blatnick, an Olympic wrestling gold medalist. Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta, who had just bought the UFC for $2 million, which at the time sounded like overpaying for a company that was banned in 36 states and had been called human cockfighting by a sitting U.S. senator. If New Jersey didn't regulate MMA, the sport was dead. Not struggling, not declining, dead. So they wrote the unified rules of mixed martial arts, 31 official fouls, weight classes, rounds, mandatory gloves, no headbutts, no soccer kicks, no stomps, no groin strikes, no strikes to the back of the head, no throat strikes. And then the ones that needed explanations because nobody had thought to ban them before. No fish hooking. That's when someone shoves their fingers inside your mouth and pulls. No small joint manipulation. That's when someone grabs your individual fingers and bends them until they snap, which is exactly as fun as it sounds. And buried in that list was one ban that nobody questioned at the time but would haunt one fighter for 23 years. No 12 to 6 elbows. That's an elbow thrown straight down, like a clock hand going from 12 to 6. Why was it banned? Big John McCarthy later admitted the commission watched a video of karate guys breaking blocks of ice with downward elbows and panicked. They watched guys break ice and banned an elbow based on ice. They banned an elbow based on an ice-breaking karate demonstration. That is real. That actually happened. December 5th, 2009. Jon Jones, 22 years old, widely considered the most talented fighter who ever lived, fought Matt Hamill. Jones was dominating, mounted on top, raining down strikes. The fight was seconds from being stopped. Then Jones threw downward elbows, 12 to 6. Referee stopped the fight. Disqualification. The only loss on Jones' record. for a move that was banned because of ice. In November 2024, the rule was abolished. 12 to 6 elbows are now legal. Jones's loss, still on his record, can't fix it, won't fix it. The greatest fighter in UFC history has a permanent loss for a move that's now perfectly legal. Remember that idea from earlier? Banning one weapon forces a fighter to evolve? Jones is the proof. Except in his case, the weapon got unbanned. The loss didn't. But here's the thing about rules. Having them and enforcing them are two completely different things. Jon Jones, the same fighter who lost his record to a banned elbow, spent his entire career poking opponents in the eyes. Not accidentally. He said it on camera, "I do poke people in the eyes, and it's very illegal, but I do it." Against Daniel Cormier, Jones committed 3 separate fouls in one fight. Point deductions, 0. Jones won by unanimous decision. The rules existed. The consequences didn't. And if that's what happened to the most watched fighter in the sport, imagine what happened when the cameras weren't on. But nothing in the UFC's history compares to what happened to Yuki Nakai. Remember the man from the very first UFC fight? The one who kicked out Taylor Tuli's teeth? The one who bit Royce Gracie's ear? Gerard Gordeau didn't stop there. 1995, Vale Tudo, Japan. 2 years after UFC 1, a 5'4" Japanese fighter named Yuki Nakai, one of the pioneers of submission grappling, stepped into the ring against Gordeau, the same Gordeau, the man who had already shown the world exactly what he was willing to do inside a ring with no rules. During the fight, Gordeau gouged Nakai's right eye, not accidentally, not in the heat of the moment. He drove his fingers into Nakai's eye socket while Nakai was on the ground. Nakai lost the sight in his right eye. He didn't tell anyone. He fought 2 more fights that same night, blind in one eye. He submitted Gordeau, the man who had just blinded him, with a heel hook. Then he fought Craig Pittman in the final, won that too. Nakai kept his injury secret for years. He didn't want the Japanese government to use it as an excuse to ban MMA. He sacrificed his eye and his silence to protect a sport that didn't even have rules yet. The rule book has 31 fouls, but it doesn't have a page for what Yuki Nakai gave. Gerard Gordeau kicked out 3 teeth at UFC 1 and called it sport. He bit Royce Gracie's ear and called it survival. He blinded Yuki Nakai and called it fighting. And Nakai, the man who lost the most, was the only one who fought to protect it. Every single rule exists because someone got hurt. The headbutt ban has Mark Coleman's name on it. The groin strike ban has Keith Hackney's fists on it. The 12 to 6 elbow ban has Jon Jones's record on it. The cage in Denver. The conference room in New Jersey, the arena in Japan where a man lost his eye and told no one. All the same sport, all the same story. The rules aren't bureaucracy. They're a record of every time the sport almost didn't survive. So here's the question. If you were Yuki Nakai, blind in one eye, with 2 more fights ahead of you and a sport that might die, if you speak up, would you fight? Or would you walk away? Drop it below. And if this video was worth your time, you know where the button is. Next up, the most controversial player in NBA history, a career that split an entire fan base in 2, a decision that made half the country hate him overnight, and the question nobody has been able to answer since. See you there.